Next time, think twice before you fly.
Do you trust your pilot?
Tonight, we uncover the chilling confession of a commercial pilot.
Next time you fly, remember me.
I need to warn you before we begin. You're about to hear two stories that are real, or at least as real as any nightmare that creeps through the silence of a night flight. Tales ripped from the skies over the United States, told like filthy confessions from those who survived. Stories about flying, that modern fantasy of defying gravity. But what if the sky isn't just empty? What if it's watching you back? Tonight, we're opening the door to things that should never be told. A pilot consumed by an obsession no one can explain. An airplane where nobody at all, can describe what's killing them one by one. Before we go on, I recommend you turn off the lights and listen carefully to every sound around you. It might just be the wind, or it might be an omen. Buckle up. If you think you've seen every kind of horror, tonight you'll learn the sky has no limits when it comes to fear. Oh, and before I forget, if you dare, subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, share this video with someone who thinks they're too skeptical to feel fear, and tell us in the comments, have you ever had a flight you can't forget? Because tonight you won't be able to. Let's begin. First story, the cockpit obsession. I never thought I'd write this. My hands are shaking as I say it. There's something blasphemous about turning these memories into words, like giving them form will bring them back. But I need to warn anyone who still dares to fly at night, alone with their thoughts, trusting the sky is just sky, because it isn't. I always loved flying. The first time I sat in a cockpit as a young man, I felt an almost godlike sense of control. Nothing could touch me up there. Below me, the world was a map. Above, just emptiness. A pure, clean void with no promises or threats. That lie destroyed me. I'm a pilot with over 20 years of experience. Medals, commendations, glowing letters of recommendation. I trained others. I saw accidents. I saw people die. And even then I considered myself solid, unshakable. I used to laugh at stories of crazy pilots and cursed planes. I laughed. What a joke. I'll try to be clear. I'll tell you exactly how it happened, step by step. Maybe you'll think I'm making it up to entertain you, to shock you, but I'm not. I'm trying to get rid of this weight. It was a routine night route. Denver to Atlanta, clear sky, perfect visibility, nothing on radar. I knew every sound in that cockpit. The gentle beep of the autopilot, the subtle clicks of the intercom. During the first hour of the flight, I heard a faint sound like static, a whisper. I ignored it. Avionics make noise. Sometimes radio frequencies cross. But this didn't sound like interference. It had rhythm, cadence, almost a voice. I told myself, you're tired, focus. But it came back, clearer. It was a wet, intimate whisper, as if someone was right at my neck. I'm here. I turned sharply. Nothing, just the co-pilot, asleep in his reclined seat, authorized by procedure. I was in command. I was alone, or not. I tried calling the tower. The voice stopped. Silence. The co-pilot woke up. We chatted about nothing. He noticed nothing. Not the sound, not my cold sweat. But I noticed it didn't want to be heard by anyone else. On the next flights, it happened again. Sometimes faint as a sigh, other times clear as a whisper in my ear. Never a full sentence, just fragments. More. Need you. I tried to ignore it. I prayed. Yes, me, the lifelong skeptic, praying like a scared kid. But it didn't stop. I started avoiding company in the cockpit. I'd send the co-pilot to check the cabin, to sleep, to fill out paperwork. I wanted to be alone, to hear better. That's when I understood. It wasn't just a scare. It was an invitation. I don't know how to explain it without sounding insane. But when I listened, I felt an impossible euphoria, a perverse, electric pleasure that burned in my temples. I felt sharper, more alive, more in control than ever. I wanted more. I started flying extra shifts, volunteering to cover for others. No one questioned it. I was a respected veteran, an example. But inside I knew I was being called, and I answered. I began talking back to the whispers, muttering responses. They thought I was running verbal checklists out loud. I faked it, but I was talking to nothing. Even now I don't know what it was. A demon, some ancient force, my own madness. But it knew me. It knew what I wanted. Power, control, lives in my hands. And it gave me that, but it demanded payment. The last thing I remember before fully giving in was its laughter. Yes, it laughed. A dry, cavernous sound, cold as thin air at altitude. That's when I stopped resisting. I stopped flying for the airline. I started flying for it. If you think you'd never go insane, stay with me until the end. This is my confession. The story of how I handed control over to something that wasn't human. Something that wanted more than just a crash. It wanted my soul. It was so subtle at first that any normal person would have ignored it. Aviation authorities love to talk about redundancy, safety, checklists. Everything has a backup. Nothing is supposed to fail. But who checks the pilot's mind? I thought I was safe. Until I noticed the first detail. It was the smell. The cockpit always had this dry, sterile scent. Old leather, maintenance oil, burnt coffee. But that night, I smelled something different. Damp, moldy, like the cabin was rotting from the inside. I checked the air conditioning. Normal. The co-pilot didn't smell anything, just me. I took a deep breath, trying to ignore it. But I couldn't. On another flight, the mist appeared. Not clouds outside, inside. A thin thread of pale smoke snaked along the cockpit floor like it was rising from my boots. It vanished the moment I really looked at it. Did I report it? Of course not. How do you write that in a report? Observation. Saw ghostly smoke rising from the floor, but all systems normal. I started to doubt myself, but the sound convinced me otherwise. The whisper grew bolder. Before it was random noise. Now it spoke in phrases. I tried to focus on the instruments but heard, "You're ready. They trust you. Do it." Once, my co-pilot asked if I was okay. I gave him a fake smile, said I was tired, that everything was fine, but it wasn't. So I started messing up even basic commands. Almost missed an altitude alert, confused a request from the tower, things I never did. And the worst part, I liked it. It was like I was testing power, like a child playing with matches in a barn full of hay. The whisper praised me when I screwed up, yes. More. It was like someone was shaping me for something. At night, when I tried to sleep in the hotel, I heard knocking on the door. Always 3 slow knocks. I opened it many times. No one was there. But I knew it was him. Always him. I started avoiding sleep. Spent nights poring over manuals, not to be a better pilot, but to know every system if he needed me to use it. I became paranoid, distrusted everyone, thought the passengers knew, that they looked at me differently. An old woman thanked me with a smile as she disembarked. I almost screamed at her. I was sure she knew, but the company didn't see anything wrong. Perfect hours, 0 incidents. I was the model employee. Inside, though, I was rotting. I started talking out loud in the cockpit, muttering responses he wanted. They called it reinforced verbal procedure. No one suspected, but I knew what I was doing, feeding it. I started feeling powerful, like I could decide who lived and who died with a single move. If you think that can't happen to you, you're lying to yourself. We all have something rotten waiting to grow. I just gave it room to bloom and it took over. I don't know when he decided to stop playing. The whispers were constant. I didn't need cockpit silence to hear them anymore. They followed me to breakfast, to the hotel bathroom, while I pretended to listen to air traffic control instructions. Even the sound of the engines became a chorus for him, but the day he showed himself for real was different. We were at 33,000 feet, flying over the New Mexico desert. A cloudless night, a perfect black sky punctured with stars. I should have felt on top of the world, but I was trembling. The cabin was too cold. I checked the thermostat. Normal. Still, I could see my breath, like I was breathing in an open tomb. The co-pilot was dozing. I never woke him anymore. I wanted to be alone. That's when he spoke clearly. No static, no ambiguity. "You are mine." There was no denying it. This wasn't radio interference. It wasn't my imagination. It was a voice unlike anything human, deep, harsh, like rocks grinding at the bottom of the sea. I closed my eyes. He continued, "Look at me." I wanted not to obey. but my hands moved on their own, my neck twisting, trying to see something I knew wasn't there. But he was. A black shape, a void in the air, like the darkness had been carved with claws. No face, no body, just an absolute absence. I froze. The panel started flickering, instruments blinking with false alarms. Altitude error, fuel imbalance, all lies, all meant to distract me. I couldn't even answer the tower. My hands were shaking, but he spoke again. "Trust me." My chest burned. I felt my ribs tighten as if something was wrapping around them, squeezing. The cabin seemed to shrink, the ceiling lowering, buttons multiplying, all of them judging me. I was sweating so much my glasses slid down. I wiped my face, my hand coming away streaked with blood. My nose was bleeding and I hadn't even realized. The co-pilot woke up, startled. "You okay?" I couldn't speak. I just turned to him with a cold smile, a smile I didn't feel. He stared at me, eyes wide with terror. He grabbed his mic, calling for help. But the tower didn't answer. He tried another frequency. Nothing. I heard only the laughter in my head. Laughter without joy, without humanity. "Now you know." The co-pilot grabbed my arm, shaking me. I shoved him, harder than I meant. His head hit the side window with a sickening thud. Silence. He looked at me, crying, no blood, but pure terror in his eyes, and it excited me in a filthy way. "Continue," said the voice. I almost obeyed. But in that second, some part of me screamed. I fought him, clenched my eyes shut, tightened my seatbelt until it hurt. I muttered prayers mixed with curses. The panel stabilized. The lights stopped flashing. The co-pilot was sobbing, hammering the mic for help, and I just laughed, quietly, contained. But I laughed because I knew he hadn't left. He was just waiting for the right moment to come back. I know what you're thinking. Why didn't you ask for help? Why didn't you tell anyone? Because he didn't let me. The rules were there to protect me. The manuals, the procedures, the safety protocols. But every time I tried to follow them exactly, he punished me. It started with tiny failures. Ignoring a speed warning for a few seconds, answering a tower request too late. I'd fix it, apologize, but I could feel his laughter deep in my skull. He was testing my limits. The sound on the intercom changed. It wasn't static anymore. It was clear, whispering, full sentences. "Turn it off." I obeyed. I turned off the radio for a few seconds in the middle of a conversation with the tower. When I turned it back on, ATC was calling frantically. I apologized, blamed the equipment. They noted it, but didn't press. I was reliable, a veteran, but inside I felt like a child playing with matches in a barn full of hay. I started skipping checklist steps, turning off unnecessary lights, adjusting cabin pressure just below standard. Small things, almost invisible, but to him they were offerings. I felt a filthy pleasure every time I broke a rule. The voice vibrated with satisfaction. Good. More. I wasn't flying for the airline anymore. I was flying for him. I remember a night flight to Chicago. 148 passengers asleep. The co-pilot trusted me so much he didn't even check anything. I disengaged the autopilot just to feel it. The plane rocked gently. Altitude alarms whispered like a chorus from hell, but I laughed. I turned it back on before anyone noticed. The co-pilot looked at me, worried. "Everything okay?" he asked. I smiled. Light turbulence, nothing major. He accepted it. The voice in my head was delighted. I started planning scenarios. What if I shut everything off? What if I locked the cockpit door? What if I dove? I didn't do it, but I thought about it, and he knew. Every fantasy was a gift for him. I was feeding something hungry. During layovers, I avoided contact, lied to the crew, said I wanted to rest. But I sat in the dark, lights off, listening to his breathing. Sometimes there were knocks at the door, 3 slow knocks. Always 3. I didn't open anymore, just whispered back, "I know you're there." And he laughed, because he knew I had nowhere left to run. I was his, a dependable captain for the others, a devoted priest for him. Then came the flight where everything broke. The route was standard, Miami to Dallas. Clear sky, familiar crew, passengers boarding with smiles, having no idea what I was hearing. He was impatient, no more whispers. He roared, "Today." His voice vibrated through the panels, the pedals, the belt digging into my gut. I felt nauseous, but I laughed, because I knew what he wanted. I had promised. The co-pilot noticed something in my eyes. "You okay, Captain?" I nodded, silent, my jaw so tight it hurt. We took off without issue, cruise altitude, drinks served, everything calm. That's when he said, "Now." My hand trembled on the yoke. He ordered me, "Shut it all off." For a second I hesitated. My vision darkened at the edges. I felt his smell, damp, ancient, like rotting meat in a basement. "Now." My finger hovered over the master switch. "Captain?" The co-pilot realized. He grabbed my arm. "What are you doing?" I stared at him, saw tears in his eyes, pure fear, and I felt pleasure. "Show who's in charge." I clicked. The lights died. Alarms screamed. The cabin turned red, then black. Seconds of absolute chaos. Muted shrieks behind the cockpit door. Flight attendants running, metal groaning. The co-pilot punched my shoulder, yelling to turn it back on. I didn't hear him. I heard only him. The voice became a chorus. "You are ours." I watched myself from outside, like a spectator. A shadow sat in my lap, its ghostly hands on mine, guiding me. I was laughing. Saliva dripped down my chin. The co-pilot was openly sobbing now. I could have killed everyone, but he didn't want that. He wanted the show, pure terror. I let the system come back. The lights flickered back on. The instruments rebooted. Heavy silence. The co-pilot was trembling, plastered to his seat. You almost..." He couldn't finish. I didn't answer, just closed my eyes. Inside my head, he was smiling. Very good. More next time. I knew he'd never be satisfied. The tower asked, panicked, what had happened. "Brief electrical fault," I croaked, almost laughing. "Resolved." I wrote nothing else in the log, because no one would believe the rest. Because even I didn't want to remember, but he would. Always. You think it's over. You think I got arrested, that I confessed, that someone investigated. None of that happened. I walked off the plane like nothing had happened, smiled politely at the flight attendants, cleared security, picked up my bag. No one looked twice. No one suspected a thing. I was the veteran pilot, trusted, but inside me, something was laughing. I didn't sleep that night, just lay in my hotel bed staring at the ceiling, waiting for the sound. He didn't knock, didn't whisper in the dark. He was inside. I felt his breath in my chest, matching my heartbeat, as if we'd fused. We are one. The next day I signed on for another flight. Denver to Los Angeles. The sun was shining, passengers smiling, babies laughing. Everything looked so normal. I wanted to scream, to warn them, but I didn't. I was calm because he was satisfied. For now, I did every checklist, followed every rule. The co-pilot suspected nothing, but I knew all he had to do was ask, and I'd shut everything off again. And he would ask, not today, not tomorrow, but someday. I felt it like a promise burned into my brain. I'm not the dependable pilot they know anymore. I'm the bridge, the flesh and metal he uses to travel. I didn't ask for this, but I didn't fight hard enough either, because deep down, I liked it. And now I'm telling you, not to confess, not to ask for help, but to warn you. Next time you fly and you hear the captain giving instructions in that calm voice, watch his eyes. See if he's really still there, because it might be me, or worse, it might be him. I shouldn't be talking about this. I've been a flight attendant for over 10 years. I've dealt with fights, panic attacks, in-flight medical emergencies. I've seen people die right in front of me. I always kept my composure, followed the manual. But nothing prepared me for that night. I have no explanation, and God knows I tried to find one. I'm telling this because I don't want anyone else to go through what I did. I'm not asking for forgiveness or help. I just want to warn you, because he's up there, and he has no name. It was supposed to be an easy flight. Denver to Seattle, night flight, clear skies, perfect weather forecast, sleepy passengers, no screaming babies, almost relaxing. I used to love those flights. The dark cabin, reading lights like artificial stars, a silence that felt almost sacred, but that night the silence was wrong. It was heavy, stagnant, like the air had weight. I walked down the aisle checking seatbelts. I saw the passengers, and that's when my stomach turned. No one was talking. No whispers, no muffled laughs, just heads facing forward, eyes open too wide. A woman was trembling, clutching the armrest so hard her knuckles were white. A man had cracked, dry lips, murmuring something I couldn't hear, but no one screamed. I stopped, tried to speak, my voice caught, and then I heard it. It wasn't sound. It was like the air around me vibrated inside me, a presence without a face, without form, but I knew he was there. I wanted to run to the cockpit, to warn the captain, to beg him to turn back, to descend, to do anything, but I couldn't, because I was stuck in a softly lit aisle, surrounded by people who knew, and no one did anything, because we all knew it wouldn't matter. I don't know what he wanted, I don't know what he is, I only know he saw us, and no one walked off that flight the same. If you think you're safe up there, listening to the quiet hum of the engines, listen to the rest, because I can still hear that silence. After that aisle, nothing felt normal anymore. I tried to stick to protocol, smiled at anyone who looked at me, pretended everything was fine, but inside I was shaking, because I felt it. I can't explain. It was like the air itself weighed more on us, like the plane was sinking into something thick and invisible. The reading lights seemed dimmer. The few voices that dared speak were muffled, distant. I walked to the back to talk to my colleague. He was pale, sweating. "Do you see it?" he asked, voice shaking. "See what?" I asked, though I knew. "Them, they're not blinking." He pointed down the aisle. "None of them." I turned slowly. It was true. Row after row of frozen faces, eyes wide and glassy. One man had a single tear rolling down but didn't move to wipe it away. The air seemed to vibrate, not with sound but as if the molecules themselves were colliding, making a silent noise. "Something's wrong with the air," he said. "The pressurization..." I checked the internal panel. All normal, but nothing felt normal. When I walked back into the aisle, I smelled mold, strong, like a damp basement. I saw a woman cover her nose, crying without sound. I tried to ask if she was okay, but my voice died before it left my throat. I heard something, not a voice, a feeling, a cold, formless presence pressing against my chest, like something without a face leaned close to whisper, "You see me." I shook all over. My colleagues tried to calm passengers who were murmuring prayers or whimpering quietly, but no one screamed. It was a silent terror. I wanted to run to the cockpit, to warn the captain, to ask for help, but my legs wouldn't move. It felt like the aisle stretched forever, like we weren't in the world anymore. And I swear on everything I love. For a second, I saw something in the air. It had no shape. It was a tear, a flaw in reality, a place where light refused to enter. But it vanished when I blinked, and everyone around seemed to feel it too. A woman whispered, "He's hungry." I didn't know if I wanted to cry or vomit, because I felt the same thing. I tried to stay calm. God knows I tried. We're trained to manage panic, to smile even when the plane shakes like a toy. But there was no turbulence that night. The terror came from inside. I went up to my colleague and whispered, "We have to talk to the cockpit." He was shaking his head, eyes wide, hands trembling. "I went," he stammered. "I knocked. They didn't answer." My stomach dropped. I ran down the aisle, dodging frozen passengers who looked like broken dolls. I reached the cockpit door. I knocked 3 times. "Captain, I need to talk to you." Nothing. I knocked harder. "It's urgent." Total silence. I rested my forehead against the door. That's when I felt something cold on the other side, an impossible chill. I jerked back, shivering from head to toe. I heard footsteps behind me. I turned. A passenger was standing in the middle of the aisle, tall, too thin, eyes completely black, no light in them. "Please sit down, sir," I asked, my voice breaking. He opened his mouth, but no sound came. Just a wet hiss, like he was breathing water. Another passenger started rocking in their seat, murmuring, "He doesn't want explanations. He doesn't want words." I wanted to scream. I wanted to help everyone, calm them, do what I'd always done, but the air was heavy like cement. A dull noise filled my ears, like the plane was creaking from the inside. I grabbed the intercom, tried to call the cockpit, just static. Tried again. "Captain, answer!" Silence. Then I heard it. It wasn't static. It was him. A low, wet whisper, full of something rotten. "There's nowhere to go." I dropped the intercom like it was burning me. I looked down the aisle. Everyone knew, even the ones not speaking, even the ones crying silently. There was nothing left to say. No explanation. Just him. I wish I could say it ended there. That after the silence, the whispered prayers, the heavy air, everything went back to normal. But it didn't. That was only the beginning. I tried to organize my thoughts, repeating the safety procedures in my head so I wouldn't lose it, but nothing made sense. The lights started to fail. At first it was quick flickers, almost unnoticeable. Then long seconds of total darkness. No one screamed. That was the worst sign. A child whimpered softly, her face buried in her mother's lap. But even the mother trembled and couldn't comfort her. When the lights flickered back on, I saw passengers in strange positions, as if they'd moved without meaning to or been pushed by something. One man was bleeding from his nose, but didn't seem to notice. I went to him, tried to speak. My voice shook. "Sir, do you need help?" He turned his head slowly, eyes sunken, like two bottomless pits. He smiled, a cracked, dry, joyless smile. "He's here," he whispered. My skin crawled. I felt something pass through me, like a cold wind that shouldn't exist in a pressurized cabin. My colleague ran up, crying. They're praying," he stammered. "They're all praying non-stop." I looked back. It was true. Some were whispering prayers in different languages. Others rocked back and forth in a trance. But no one screamed, as if they'd accepted it. I smelled it. Rot. Damp, like something dead in a basement. I clamped my nose shut, gagging. But the smell was inside me, like I was breathing the stench of something alive and hungry. The light went out again. In the dark, I heard a chorus of whispers. I couldn't make out words, only tones, as if the entire plane was murmuring. My hands trembled so much, I dropped my flashlight. When the light came back on, I saw everyone was looking at me, all of them, as if they were waiting for something, as if they knew I knew. I swallowed hard, and in that instant, I felt something looking back at me. Not the passengers, something behind them, something that shouldn't be there. I can't forget that moment. That's why I'm telling all of this now, because that was the point when I knew there was no going back. The lights failed one last time and went out completely. The aisle was swallowed in total darkness. Only the low seatbelt alarms and smoke detectors flashed with intermittent red. The air was unbreathable. It felt like all the oxygen had been sucked out. I heard the passengers shifting, but it was the wrong sound. Wet, like raw meat dragging over carpet. I gripped my flashlight so hard my fingers hurt. The beam shook wildly. I saw faces. Faces that looked human but were wrong. Mouths twisted into cracked, broken smiles, lips split and dry. Too many teeth, or missing teeth, and they were murmuring. It wasn't prayer, it was worship. I shook, trying to shout at them to sit down, to stop, but my voice died in my throat because I saw him. In the middle of the aisle, it wasn't a man. It wasn't anything that could be described with logic. It was like a rip in reality. A flaw where light refused to exist. Something with no shape but that still took up space. I felt him looking at me without eyes, and I knew what he wanted. Not the plane, not a crash. He wanted us. He wanted to watch us feel. He wanted to break us from the inside. I took a step back, pressing against the cabin wall. My legs were shaking so badly. He moved, he didn't walk. He was just closer. The air contracted around us. My ears popped painfully. I felt blood trickle. The passengers began to laugh, a harsh, broken, forced laughter, like they were being made to do it. I covered my ears, but the sound came from inside, from my head, from my soul, and he said without speaking, "I will stay." I fell to my knees, shaking, unable to pray. unable to cry, just watching as the aisle seemed to stretch on forever, swallowing all of us in darkness. I don't remember how it ended. I swear on everything I have. One moment I was on the floor, on my knees, drenched in sweat, blood dripping from my nose, hearing that laughter without sound. The next, I was standing in the aisle, lights on. The cabin was fully lit again. The passengers were taking deep breaths, like they'd just come back to life. Some were crying silently. Others clung to the armrest like they never wanted to leave. My colleague was staring at me without blinking. His eyes were bloodshot. Neither of us spoke. I tried to open my mouth, but nothing came out. The rotten smell was gone. The air felt normal, but I knew it wasn't. I went to the cockpit door, knocked. It opened slowly. The captain was seated, hands on the controls and staring straight ahead. The co-pilot was quietly sobbing, hugging his knees. No one said a word. The rest of the flight happened on autopilot. No announcements, no apologies, no instructions. We landed in Seattle with unnerving precision. The passengers disembarked in silence, avoiding everyone's eyes. Some looked like they'd aged years in just hours. I stayed until the last second, locked the door behind me, took a deep breath. I felt him there. I didn't see anything, didn't hear anything, but he was there, in the air, in me. I asked to be removed from the schedule. They told me I needed rest. I didn't tell them anything, because there's no way to explain. How do you tell someone the sky has eyes, that there's something up there waiting for you to close your eyes so it can get in? Since that day, I haven't been able to fly again. Not because I'm afraid of crashing, but because I'm afraid of arriving. If you're flying today, listen carefully. When everything gets too quiet, when the engines seem far away and you only hear your own heartbeat, pay attention. It might be him trying to get in, because he has no name, but he knows yours. Are you still here? If you made it to the end of these stories, I need to thank you, because not everyone has the stomach to hear what lives in the dark corners of the sky. Today you heard two stories that shouldn't exist. A captain who handed his mind over to something hungry, smiling while holding hundreds of lives at his fingertips. And a flight attendant who tried to protect the passengers while something faceless, nameless, and merciless coiled around the bones of anyone brave enough to look up. Maybe you think it's just fiction. Maybe you want to believe it's just a story meant to scare you before bed. I wanted to believe that too. But every time I hear the roar of a jet engine cutting through the night sky, I wonder, who's up there and what came with them? Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had a strange flight? A bad feeling? A silence too heavy? A presence you couldn't explain? Tell us in the comments. I read everything. And if you survived these stories, don't forget to like the video, share it with someone who says they're not afraid of anything, and subscribe to the channel to hear more stories like these, because horror doesn't end. And here, it always finds a way to fly to you. If you liked this story, click the link below and discover even deeper horrors in our exclusive ebook.